Welcome to Surviving to Thriving, the podcast for women ready to reclaim their energy, clarity, and life. I'm Dr. Rachel Yeager, and I know what it's like to feel exhausted, overwhelmed, and stuck. Here, we go beyond quick fixes to explore the science and soul of healing, covering stress resilience, brain reset, hormone balance, nervous system support, and connecting with your intuition. If you're ready to stop surviving and start thriving, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello. I want to talk about brain health because our brain is the CEO of our entire body. Our brain is so powerful that we can experience health symptoms that we think our gut telling us something is wrong if we're having gut cramps, or we think that there's inflammation in our head if we're having a headache. Our brain is so powerful, it can create memory loops that rerun symptoms. If you've ever been to a live music performance and you've seen someone use that little pedal where they record a snippet of what they're singing and then they replay that to compound and create a little echo, we have that same system that our brain runs to actually recreate symptoms based on a memory. So it's not actually pure signals coming from our system. Our brain is so powerful. We know that thinking about something positive or happy, like puppies, for a minute or two, literally raises our levels of antibodies, which are our warrior cells that attack viruses and keep us from getting sick. So if you take a plane flight, think of puppies. And we know that people who are recovering from different surgeries and we're trying to prevent muscle atrophy from not being used, if they visualize using their muscles and being active, their muscle preserved itself way more than people who did not. So those are just some of the examples of how incredibly powerful our brains are. Because our brains are the master CEOs, if they get hijacked, if stress signals and abnormal brain chemistry hijacks our brain function, and we're going and chasing all the individual physical symptoms in our body, then we're just playing whack-a-mole and we're missing the main central part that's controlling everything. It can feel really daunting to dive into brain health because it seems like that means we have to sit still and do breathing exercises, and we're already feeling uncomfortable and our mood isn't feeling good. We're tired. We don't want to sit with that and tune into that and amplify that. We don't want to sit and meditate. And that's literally because we're in fight or flight. If you're running from a lion, why would you sit down and do a breathing exercise or meditate? That makes no sense. So our body has resistance to us having stillness and doing those things because it wants us to survive and it wants us to outrun the lion. So instead of forcing ourselves and trying to mind over matter and jump into techniques that our body is literally resisting, I like to work backwards and say, how can we use the physical stuff that we can more easily control? At least in the beginning, it's easier to start with the physical. How can we use that to give safe feedback to our brain so our brain can leave the fight or flight state, go into the rest and heal state, and then we have our CEO back, and then our physical health in all aspects, no matter what's going on. Do we have Hashimoto's? Do we have Crohn's? Are we recovering from mold? Do we keep getting sick all the time? Whatever it is, then our body has its full capacity to function. And if we do it this way and we help bring back our CEO, then we don't need to worry about all the little symptoms that pop up. We don't need to chase diagnoses and more lab work. We can use lab work to help us stabilize the physical part of our brain. But beyond that, we don't need to go chasing stuff so much because we're going to get our CEO back. That's the foundation, and everything flows from there. If we do have something going on, like an infection that we could treat, then once we treat that infection, it's going to hold so much better. The body's going to hold that recovery and not relapse and have that infection be reactivated if we can keep our brain and our nervous system on our side, working for us like an ally. A lot of times people go through the functional route. It's really costly. I personally went through it, and as a patient, it's very expensive to try to go through and do all these functional things, do all these cool new IVs and all these things that are supposed to help. And it is such a bummer when that stuff either doesn't help or you end up relapsing later and rebounding back to your symptoms afterward. And if we don't have a nervous system, if we don't have a brain that's capable of holding the improvements that we get, that is what will happen. We will rebound. So, working on the brain is, in my opinion, the most important thing that we can do because we think that our chronic symptoms are why we have low mood or anxiety or why we're having trouble sleeping at night, why we're feeling stressed. If our symptoms would just go away, we wouldn't have anything to be anxious about. And that could have been true once upon a time at the very beginning of you having symptoms. But at this point, your brain has learned a symptom map. And even if your symptoms go away right now with a magic wand, then in a year, if your symptoms started coming back, you would go right back into a panic state. Anyone would. I would. Because this is our brain's mapping. This is what it's learned to do. We never taught our brain how to be okay no matter what's going on. And therefore, when something we can't control happens, like symptoms popping up, then we go into a panic response because we never taught our brain how to be okay despite the symptoms. So, one of the coolest things that I was able to bring on for myself was getting my brain into a place where it's totally normal to still have anxiety responses, to still go into fight or flight. If you're dodging a car on the highway, you should be in fight or flight. We need that full response. We're zoomed in, we're honed in on the situation. We don't need that when we're sitting on the couch hanging out and we get a little twinge of pain or we start to feel our fatigue come back or we start to really feel brain fog. So it's all about when it's appropriate to have these responses. And so helping our brain relearn what's appropriate so we can be in the rest and heal state where our brain can make hormones, it can help heal and repair tissue, it can digest and absorb our nutrients. It's doing all the functions that we need for healing, not when it's in the fight or flight state, but when it's in the rest and heal state as default. And it's really hard to get ourselves into the rest and heal state by doing the mind over matter approach. So physically helping support our brain to get there is, I think, one of the most helpful things that we can do. It's the neglected, ignored side of the picture. So our brain is powerful. It has a huge impact on our bodies and how we feel. It impacts our system in so many ways. We talked about how we can have more of those antibodies created just by changing your thoughts and thinking certain things. So our thought patterns and our mindset are really important. It's a lot easier to have a good outlook on life and wake up feeling happy for the day when you have energy. It's a lot easier to have a good outlook and feel grateful for things in your life when you don't have crippling anxiety or anxiety about your symptoms. And it's a lot easier to value time with your loved ones and really have that regulation with other nervous systems and want to spend time with people so you can get that co-regulation with other people's nervous systems when you feel low mood and you just don't feel like doing anything, you don't feel like socializing. So our brain, because it has this feed down effect on our body, if we go straight to the source and nourish our brain, the CEO of our body, we get to feel that whole effect, that whole downstream effect in every area of our body. Because our brain is so powerful, it is constantly scanning all of our surroundings for threats. And if we're having chronic symptoms, then it thinks that there's constantly a threat there all the time. So if we can't get rid of our symptoms with a magic wand, then a lot of people ask, okay, then how do I tell my brain that the threat is gone, that the threat is not there anymore, that I'm safe, that I can come back down into the rest and heal state, and I don't have to be in my survival mode where I'm running away from the lion? So a lot of things happen in survival mode, and we can reverse engineer those. So in survival mode, again, because our brain is so powerful and it controls so many functions in our body, when we're in survival mode, we go into a survival mode production of our brain chemicals, which are called our neurotransmitters. We're not going to be making a lot of the GABA for resting, feeling grounded, feeling like our best selves, getting good restorative sleep where we don't wake up a lot and we fall asleep okay, we're going to be making more adrenaline, or we've actually burned through it and used it up because we've been running at this point for so long, depending on where you are in the journey. We also are going to have our cortisol be all over the place. When we're in survival mode, our cortisol starts pumping out, and our body is okay, I need to be in the alert position. I'm not going to be relaxed on the couch. I am sitting upright, feet on the ground, ready to move. And that's that cortisol positioning. Your brain is always in the ready to move, which means you have to have higher cortisol so that if you do need more cortisol to handle something stressful happening, then it's there, it's ready to go. So our poor adrenal glands, which make our cortisol, they are always on guard. And if they stay on guard for too long, if we ran from the lion for more than a couple hours, which at this point, most of us have been having symptoms for months or years, then our adrenals get really fatigued. You might have heard the term adrenal fatigue. And that's just like a slang way of talking about your adrenals getting exhausted from being in this constant needing to be ready position. Our cortisol eventually gets depleted and our curve gets abnormal. So instead of us having a normal amount of cortisol so that we have energy and we feel good, we might have a really high amount of cortisol so we feel really wired, or we might have a really low amount of cortisol and we feel exhausted. So cortisol needs to be right in the middle for us to feel okay. Cortisol is our CEO's maybe second in command. It's right up there. If our brain is our master CEO and we're breaking stuff down, cortisol controls sex hormones. It influences what our body does with the nutrients that are coming into our body. It affects our blood sugar. It affects our sleep. It affects how much our cells can detox. It is a master regulator. It is the manager of the factory, your body being this factory. So if we can help rebalance cortisol, so it's right in the middle where we want it, and it has the curve where it drops off as we go throughout the day, not a huge crash in the afternoon, but a gentle sloping down to drop off at night so we can sleep and we're not stressed about things while we're trying to sleep and our mind can shut off. That's our ideal cortisol. And if we have a good manager in charge of our factory, then all the employees are going to do better and we're going to have a smoother running factory. If you've ever worked in a job where you didn't like your boss, you know how important it is to have a good boss in charge of things. So that's our cortisol. Right underneath cortisol, and in a way, in a different department, maybe more of a lateral parallel here, we have our neurotransmitters, our brain chemicals. And so this is our main stuff we know about, like serotonin, dopamine, adrenaline. And then also, there's ones that people don't talk about so much. Histamine actually acts as a neurotransmitter in our brain. We have different calming neurotransmitters like GABA that we don't talk about a lot. And then there's a lot of other ones in there. There's precursors to them. We can actually look at the path and say, do you have enough of this precursor to even be making this neurotransmitter that you need to feel okay? There's neurotransmitters like PEA that can be too high and cause panic attacks. I've worked at this point with dozens of women who have severe panic attacks, and every single time PEA or glutamate, another lesser known neurotransmitter, or adrenaline is too high, and it's literally causing the panic attacks. So there's a very physiological basis for how our brain feels, and this creates a feedback loop because then the more stressed we are and the more adrenaline we have and the more amped up our body is from cortisol, then the more amped up we are, and it goes in a circle. So then we create more of those things. We get more and more entrenched. It becomes really hard to break the circle with mental willpower alone. And I would even argue that just focusing on mental willpower is ignoring our physiology. Our brain is super powerful. We are also in a physical body. So our physiology is going to be very important. So breaking the cycle from the physical level that we can control the most at this stage where we're having symptoms still, I think that is the missing part for a lot of people. Other areas that are really important, sex hormones. So histamine is a neurotransmitter. Histamine is affecting our brain function. It's influencing how clear we feel, how tired we feel, how much energy we feel like we have. It's driving our anxiety levels. And if we don't have the right nutrients, we can't detox that histamine. It can build up in our brain and it causes a ton of symptoms, and it can cause unease, poor sleep, doom feelings. The list goes on and on. Estrogen increases our histamine production. Progesterone reduces our histamine production, and testosterone stabilizes things in general. So if we're having hormones that are out of balance, we're not looking at what the lab lists as normal ranges. We're thinking about, for the age group you're in, for the point in your brain ovary signaling of stage of life that you're in, with all the other health factors that you have going on, what is your optimal range of these hormones? And then what is your optimal ratio of these hormones? Because the ratio between your estrogen and your progesterone, super important. When the lab gives you those results back, they're not listing ratios, they're not looking at ratios, they're not knowing what time in the cycle you're at, if you are cycling. And they will say that anything is natural for someone who is perimenopausal or beyond. And we know that there's actually a lot of benefits to still helping balance your body's hormones, whether you take hormones or whether you just use herbs that help smooth the transition. So, looking at sex hormones, our hormones are protective in so many ways. They actually help protect our heart, they help protect our brain and our cognition, and they can even help prevent dementia. So, mental clarity is very largely affected by our sex hormones. Our sex hormones act like natural steroids in a good way. It's like your body's version of ibuprofen without the side effects of medications. So when we have any shifts in our hormones, if we start or go off birth control, if we are postpartum or we stop breastfeeding, if we go through perimenopause or we're in menopause, any transition, any change in your hormones drops the mask, drops this buffer cushion layer of anti-inflammatory support. When your hormones shift and you lose that anti-inflammatory support, a lot of stuff comes to the surface. It's a great time to understand your baseline inflammation levels behind the curtain of hormones, but there's no need to suffer when we have so many tools, regardless of your preferences, regardless of things like cancer risk. There's so many tools that can be used, optimized for each person's situation and preferences, that help smooth through hormone transitions, as long as we understand functionally what's happening in the body with the changing hormone levels. We have to have an understanding of the biochemistry and how the body works and how all of these things are interconnected and cross-signaling to each other, so that we can look at the whole picture and then make things simple. We look at the whole picture, we take everything into consideration, and then we say, okay, what is the simplest thing that would cut right to the chase for this, that would accomplish multiple things at once, and that feels doable, and we want to do it in the right order that makes the most sense for optimal healing. So that's a holistic brain strategy where we understand the power our brain has. We understand that it's the CEO of our entire system. We know that there's multiple layers of brain chemicals and stress hormones and other hormone signaling going on. There's things that affect our brain with our gut health and our nutrients and our ability to detox and our cell function and how strong the membrane is around our brain neurons. All of that we can impact very easily. It just takes a strategized approach. So I'm a huge fan, obviously, of looking at all of these things. This was really huge for me in my healing. I kept chasing the infections. I kept chasing the mold that I was recovering from. I kept chasing the autoimmune part of my picture and trying to get these autoimmune conditions more under control because I thought that they were responsible for my symptoms. I didn't realize that my brain was driving my autoimmunity, and my brain was driving how I felt and my stress response and my symptoms and how my body responded to things. And so I'm not saying the brain is everything. If there's a life-threatening infection or if you are hit by a car, then brain work isn't going to heal everything. But I do think that it's a big missed part of the picture for at least 90% of people with chronic symptoms. And even if it wouldn't heal the whole picture, if you could even have 50% improvement, 70% improvement, 90% improvement in how you felt, then think of how much more energy and time and mental energy and mental resources and just bandwidth you would feel like you have to help work on things. So that's my dream for everyone, that everyone gets to have a wired, healthy, balanced brain with reset brain chemicals and appropriately functioning stress hormone response, because there's no need to live suffering, even if your symptoms are going to take a little bit of time to fully resolve, when we can get really effective support for anxiety and low mood and fatigue and low mental clarity, cognitive brain fog stuff. If this is anything that you're interested, definitely reach out. I love talking about this stuff. This has been huge in my healing journey, and I really think that the world would be a better place if we all had healthier, supported brains. All right, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in to Surviving to Thriving. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with a friend and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This show is for education and inspiration, not medical advice. For tools and next steps to restore your health, energy, and peace of mind, visit my website or connect with me online. The links are in the show notes. Until next time, keep believing. Thriving is possible for you.